If you're feeling daunted by the thought of sticking your hand up to be the healer because you don't feel up to that responsibility, then I've got the build for you. Heal Scourge, in my opinion, is one of the top 3 healers in Guild Wars 2, and it happens to be one of the simplest to play. So let's dive in with what is one of the hardest carrying heal builds in Guild Wars 2, and also one of the simplest to play. Heal Scourge is by far the best healing build that Necromancer has access to, and it's also one of my go-to builds when I'm looking to hard carry in raids and really just ensure that bosses are getting cleared no matter what. Where a lot of healers in Guild Wars 2 are focused on providing direct healing when people take damage, Heal Scourge does it a little bit differently. Here instead you're going to focus on providing a bunch of preemptive healing with barrier, as well as the ability to revive allies from downstate insanely quickly. Like I mentioned before, it's also a build that's very simple to get up and running, and with very minimal knowledge of how the build works, you can get into raids, start healing, and know you're going to at least be doing a halfway decent job. Not only do we have incredible barrier access, we also have access to low cooldown Aegis so we completely mitigate certain attacks, as well as pretty good access to stability as well. Not as good as things like Chronomancer or Heal Firebrand, but we have a workable amount of stability. Another great thing about Heal Scourge is the fact that you can really customize this to suit whatever encounter you want. Most of the value on Heal Scourge actually comes from your Shroud skills, which really leaves your utility skills and your weapons up for grabs so you can customize them to whatever you want. Your weapons and utility skills, while important, aren't critical at all for how Heal Scourge functions. So this means that you can customize basically everything to your preference and playstyle, or slot in different skills depending on the encounter. So you've got a lot of different toys to play with here. Now the main mechanic for Scourge is that instead of having your second health bar in Death Shroud, it's now getting converted to Desert Shroud. So you don't get the second health bar, but you instead get permanent access to your Shroud skills, whether you are in or outside of Shroud. Now your first Shroud skill, Manifest Sandshade, for you as a Heal Scourge is going to deal a little bit of damage, it's going to apply barrier to you and allies, inflict conditions, and it's going to have an important interaction with a few traits to make sure you take reduced damage and have increased boon duration. So generally, if you are playing Heal Scourge, you want to have at least one shade up at all times. Very important. You can also spread them out around the group as well. Quite often on Scourge, a lot of the boons that you apply are applied around you or your shades. So you can be strategic about your shade placement to get the most boon coverage on your team. Super handy. Nefarious Favor is a very low cooldown condition cleanse on your team, because whenever you pop this, one of their conditions is going to be converted to a boon, and this is on just over a 4-second cooldown, which is insanely short. One of the things about Heal Scourge is that you actually have a huge amount of condition cleanse baked into your build for free, so lean into that on condition heavy encounters. Sand Cascade is really just going to apply barrier to you and your team, which is going to be very important in your Alacrity application later, the main point of Heal Scourge. Garish Pillar is going to fear targets around you and your shades, and through interactions with some of your traits, it's actually going to be a huge amount of passive healing as well. So whenever you activate Shroud 4, which in this case is Garish Pillar, you're going to heal around you and your shades. This is actually a very big source of your sustained healing, so you can typically blast this off cooldown to have that really high level of sustained healing, or you can try and save it as well, particularly if you need to revive your allies or if you need to recover from a big hit. Now Sandstorm Shroud is sort of your equivalent of entering Death Shroud that you would normally have on Necromancer. You still have access to all your skills, so there's no change there, but it's going to provide you a ton of barrier as well as protection, and that barrier, because of your traits, is going to get turned into Alacrity. So the more barrier you apply, the more boons you're going to apply, the more damage you can mitigate. Barrier makes everything work on Heal Scourge. It's the most important mechanic on it. Your choices in terms of gear stats are really between Harriers, Givers, and Minstrels. Harriers is going to be a choice if you want to max out your boon duration and don't want to tank in raids, because with this set you'll be running no extra toughness. Givers is very similar to Harriers, except it swaps out the power for toughness, and this is going to give you the maximum possible toughness if you really want to ensure that you will be tanking. This will also give you a huge amount of survivability, especially on power damage focus fights because of that toughness. And Minstrel's gear is going to throw in some extra vitality for good measure, which is probably going to increase your overall survivability a bit more, especially on condition damage focus fights, because you have that extra vitality to eat up those conditions at the cost of running less boon duration. Now Heal Scourge quite easily overcaps on boons, so this lower amount of boon duration isn't a particularly big issue, especially once you get some Sandshades up. You're going to jump up to 72% boon duration, so about an extra 15% boon duration, and you easily overcap on boons here. However, if you are running a Minstrel set of gear, you might want to add in a Sigil of Concentration to your weapons just to bring your boon duration up a bit. Personally, I'm quite happy to tank in raids, so I'll generally be running around with a set of Giver's gear. However, if someone else wants to tank, then I'll usually just swap swap out a few pieces of Giver's gear for Harriers to make sure that they tank, or in the worst case, swap everything out for Harriers. It's going to be fine either way. Key point is it's fairly flexible in terms of what gear you want to run. Just make sure you're getting a good amount of boon duration and keep an eye on your toughness for different raid encounters. For our rune, we're going to be running Rune of the Monk for the extra healing and boon duration. It's a very standard rune for basically every healing build out there. And for our sigils, our typical loadout is going to be the Sigil of Transference for an extra 10% healing to allies, as well as the Sigil of Water just for a bit of extra healing around us. One of the weaknesses on Scourge is that it doesn't typically offer a huge amount of burst healing compared to other healers. There's a lot of really good sustained healing and barrier application, not to mention the revive potential, but its burst healing's a little bit on the lower side compared to other healers. So Sigil of Water helps with that a little bit. For some alternatives, you can run Sigil of Concentration for some extra boon duration, especially useful if you're running Minstrel's gear, and Sigil of Paralyzation is great if you need extra break bar damage. So again, you can freely customize these depending on what you need for an encounter, but Transference and Water is going to be a very safe bet. In terms of our relics, we also have some options, but our standard one is going to be Relic of the Flock, which is going to give you extra barrier to yourself and nearby allies after you use a heal skill, and it will make it so any excess healing from this healing skill is going to be converted to barrier. More barrier just means more damage mitigation, so this is a good thing overall. Another useful relic is going to be Relic of the Midnight King, which will allow you to grant Might and Fury to nearby allies whenever you disable an enemy, so whenever you apply any CC. This is very useful because it does allow you to ramp your might up even quicker at the start of encounters, and it also means that if you are running Relic of the Midnight King, you don't need to run Desiccate in order to provide Fury to your group. Now, Fury is a very common boon, so even if you aren't running Desiccate, you're probably going to be okay. Your group's probably going to have Fury, but this just gives you another source of it, which for you as a healer and alacrity provider and just a boon provider in general, more boons is always a good thing. Relic of the Mercy is really going to let you lean into the RP of being a Heal Scourge and will allow you to revive your allies faster and give them more health when you revive them. So you get to revive them 20% faster and they will rise with 30% more health. This can be very useful if you know your squad is going to be going down a lot, especially if you're in a less experienced group. This does mean that you can sort of hard carry that little bit more. So a good option to have. Personally though, I'm typically running around with Relic of the Flock, although I do really have a soft spot for Relic of the Midnight King as well. For our food and utility, we're just going to be taking the standard bowl of fruit salad with mint garnish, your usual heal food, as well as bountiful maintenance oil, which actually offers a huge increase in your outgoing healing. So don't sleep on this as a healer. Now for weapons, like I mentioned before, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you bring, but the standard loadout is going to be dagger, torch, as well as pistol and warhorn. Dagger is going to be there for the life force generation, whereas torch, pistol, and warhorn are there for a bit of extra CC and utility. The more life force you have, it means the more you can spam your shroud skills. So more life force, universally a good thing. And once we get to the traits, we'll see even more how we're going to lean into just truly absurd amounts of life force generation. Now our dagger auto attack is simply going to deal damage and grant life force on the second and third hits. Life siphon is going to do damage to your target. It's going to heal you more if you're bleeding, and it's going to deal more damage to target if they're bleeding. Overall, it's a nice bit of extra healing for you personally. With Dark Pact, you'll inflict bleeding on yourself, deal damage to your target, inflict immobilize, which is very, very nice for quite a few raid encounters, and remove 3 boons from your enemy and convert them into conditions. So some extra boon removal here is very, very nice, especially on fights like Veil Guardian, where having at least some boon removal is essential. It's also going to generate some more life force for good measure. On Torch, Harrowing Wave is simply going to deal damage, inflict burning and torment, and generate life force. Oppressive Collapse is going to be one of your main CC skills. It's going to do a 2-second knockdown. You're going to inflict torment on the enemy, as well as provide might to nearby allies depending on how many conditions the target has. So it's quite important for your overall might generation, but it's there first and foremost for the CC. On pistol, your auto attack Vicious Shot is simply going to deal damage and inflict torment, also bounce between foes, which is quite nice. Weeping Shots is going to fire 6 bullets at your target, it's going to inflict vulnerability, torment, it pierces, and you're going to generate life force. More life force, always a good thing. Vile Blast is going to be another little bit of CC. You're going to inflict some poison, weakness, deal damage, and again, more life force. On Warhorn, Wail of Doom is an important CC skill. You're going to inflict 2 seconds of fear on your target, so if you need CC, use this. And Locust Swarm is going to grant you and your allies swiftness, as well as summon some locusts that's going to siphon health to you and your allies from nearby foes. So one, this is going to give you swiftness, which is an oddly important boon for raids. I'll circle back to that in a minute, but it's also a little bit of extra healing. Now swiftness is actually a rather important boon to think about in raids and is often overlooked in place of might, fury, quickness, and alacrity. But if you don't have really good quickness uptime, there are quite a few encounters where you're really going to feel that, especially if you need to move around quickly to get out of mechanics. But overall, given you already have the movement speed penalty when you're in combat, not having swiftness means you're going to move around at an absolute snail's pace. And if you are moving around with swiftness, and if you go on top of that with super speed as well with other builds out there, it means straight up you can just walk out of certain mechanics rather than having to dodge, which means you can save that dodge for other things. So having swiftness is an important thing. This is actually something that Heal Scourge used to really struggle with, but if you're able to use Locust Swarm off cooldown, that is 100% swiftness uptime, so that's really good. Now for our utility skills, again, we actually have a huge amount of variety that we can pick from, and largely your utility bar is completely free for you to pick whatever you want. However, these are going to be the main ones that we're going to work with. Well of Blood, you're going to summon a well on the ground, which is going to heal you, allies, provide regen, and also revive them for 3.5% a second, which is also going to help revive your allies as well. One of the best things about Heal Scourge is that it is really good at reviving down players. So when things go wrong in raids, particularly if you're in a less experienced group, Heal Scourge is a fantastic choice. Desiccate is mostly here so you can provide might and fury to yourself and your allies. It's also going to generate life force for you, which again is great, and also convert a boon on affected enemies into torment, so a bit of extra boon rip, which is also nice. The main thing here though is the might and the fury access, particularly the fury. Signet of Undeath is an amazing skill to basically slap on any necromancer build. The passive of this is going to generate more life force for you whenever you're in combat, so more life force, just a great thing as I've mentioned countless times today. And when you activate it, you're going to place a target over a downed ally, you're going to sacrifice half of your health, and you're going to be able to immediately revive them. This is one of my favorite skills on Necromancer, and really just means that if someone goes down off the group and they're going to be really annoying for you to head over and revive them, you can just very quickly throw a Signet of Undeath on them, and they're going to be right up and back in the fight. This is a very useful skill, particularly if you know people are going to be running off the group to deal with certain mechanics on things like Matthias or Veil Guardian, where people invariably get ported by the blue circles. If you're struggling for a utility skill to bring Signet of Undeath. You're going to be happy with it. Trail of Anguish is your only source of stability on Heal Scourge, so if you need stability, you're going to be bringing Trail of Anguish. It also provides some extra swiftness uptime for your team, which is good, and it's a bit of extra boon corrupt as well. Also a stun break for good measure. Now, one of the weaknesses of Heal Scourge compared to other healers like Chronomancer and Druid is its overall lack of stability access. Recently, Trail of Anguish was buffed so that now the stability is actually applied in a radius around you rather than having to have your team walk over the physical trail, which was a bit of a janky mechanic. So you do have quite reliable stability access, but you don't have multiple sources of it, unlike some other heal builds. So just keep that in mind. You need to be quite mindful of when you use this to make sure you don't waste it, so then when you actually need stability and you don't have it, your team isn't going to be knocked around, because they will be less than pleased. Now, if you need some extra CC, you can bring Spectral Grasp or Spectral Ring, depending on your preference and the encounter. Spectral Grasp is really good if there are lots of small mobs around you that you want to pull into the group so they can be cleaved down, a very handy skill. And also, if you have lots of mobs around your target that you want to CC, you can actually stand in the hitbox and it's going to fire out 5 projectiles, because it fires out multiple projectiles up to a maximum of 5, depending on the number of enemies around you. Then if you stand in the hitbox of your target, it means all 5 of those are going to hit your target. So it's actually a huge amount of CC depending on the encounter. Corrosive Poison Cloud is going to apply some poison to your target as well as a weakness to both yourself and the target, but the main reason you'd bring this is because it blocks projectiles. So if you need some projectile destruction, then Corrosive Poison Cloud is what you're going to bring. For your elite skill, you're typically going to be bringing Summon Flesh Golem for the CC that it brings. If you don't need extra CC and for some reason you want extra Boon Corrupt over what Heal Scourge already brings, you can run Ghastly Breach instead. But generally, as a healer, doing a lot of CC falls under your umbrella of responsibilities, so you can quite safely leave this on Summon Flesh Golem. People are going to get a bit suspicious if they see a Heal Scourge not doing a huge amount of CC. For our 3 main trait lines, we're going to be taking Blood Magic, Soul Reaping, and of course Scourge. Blood Magic is where most of our healing and revive strength comes from. Mark of Evasion is going to leave a mark of blood when you dodge, which actually provides regen to allies when it's triggered. This is actually a pretty underrated source of your healing, so you do want to dodge periodically to try and keep this high regen uptime. Again, Scourge really excels in that great passive healing, so regen falls under that. Ritual of Life will cause you to cast lesser Well of Blood whenever you start reviving an ally, and it causes your Wells of Blood to revive allies in every pulse. So this trait here is what makes our heal skill Well of Blood actually revive allies, and as soon as you start reviving an ally, you're going to summon another Well of Blood as well. So what you can do, if you see someone who is downed, you want to revive them, you can first throw down your normal Well of Blood and then start reviving them, because then they're actually going to have 2 Wells of Blood on top of them, which is going to be lots of extra healing as well as double the revive speed. So when you want to revive someone, if you have it, Well of Blood first, then start reviving them. Life from Death is going to cause you to heal allies whenever you exit Shroud and increase your overall healing to allies. So basically a brief time after you enter Sandstorm Shroud, your Shroud skill 5, then you're going to do a bit of a burst of healing on allies, which is going to be on top of the barrier that you've applied them as well. Last Rites further leans into the down state management that Heal Scourge brings, so as long as you are up and moving, allies around you aren't going to bleed out when they're down, and you're going to get extra healing power based on your current health. So it means people's downstate health isn't going to gradually decline like it normally would, so it's going to be much easier to revive them. Now, Transfusion is the trait that really makes Heal Scourge function, and it's going to cause your Shroud skill 4, Garish Pillar, to heal people and partially revive allies. Most importantly nowadays for Heal Scourge is that you're typically going to want to be using your Garish Pillar off cooldown for the extra sustained healing that's going to be giving, but it means you can delay it as well if you suspect people are going to go down, because you can then pop your Shroud 4, then it's going to revive people around you really quickly. So you can start stacking this with your normal Well of Blood, you'll revive people, which will trigger the lesser Well of Blood, and then you can pop Garish Pillar as well to even further revive people. So if you land all of these, you're going to see people jump up around you from downstate basically instantly on Scourge. It's really, really good. Even more if you throw on the Relic of Mercy. Now, a few balance patches ago, Transfusion was nerfed. How it used to work is it would actually port people who were in downstate towards you and then start reviving them, which honestly made Heal Scourge one of the most absolutely broken healers in the game, because it meant if people went down, it didn't matter where they went down, you just press Shroud 4, they get ported to you, and they almost instantly get revived. So it no longer ports them to you, so you have to be a bit mindful of where people are to place down your revive wells and run over to them to revive them. Use your Signet of Undeath a bit more deliberately than you otherwise had to. So a bit of a nerf for Scourge, but has actually opened up to be able to be buffed in other ways. So not all is lost. The main purpose of Soul Reaping is going to be a ton of extra life force generation. Gluttony is just going to increase the amount of life force we get from all sources, very nice. Unyielding Blast will cause our Shroud skill 1 to inflict vulnerability, which is actually what is causing our Manifest Sandshade here to inflict vulnerability. More vulnerability is good. Basically always in group content, vulnerability is going to be capped at 25, which means they're going to take 25% extra damage. But if for whatever reason it isn't, that's actually a big problem, a big damage drop for your team. So capping Alacrity, very good thing. Fear of Death is going to make your fears have increased duration, so it's great for your Warhorn 4 and Garish Pillar, and Inflicting Fear is going to generate life force. Again, more life force, just a great thing. And if you are struggling with survivability, you can swap this out for Vital Persistence as well. So you're going to get extra vitality and you're going to have 20% increased incoming healing for you. So it's going to increase your overall personal survivability. So if for whatever reason you're struggling on Heal Scourge, you can slot this in. Eternal Life is going to cause us to gain life force every second when we're not in Shroud, and when we enter Shroud, so use our Shroud 5 Sandstorm Shroud, we're going to gain protection. The main thing here is just the constant life force generation. So you'll find on Heal Scourge, compared to basically any other Necromancer build, life force just is not a concern for you. You will basically always be capped out on life force, so you're free to use your Shroud skills with complete abandon. Scourge is obviously what we need to take to become the Heal Scourge, and it's going to cause us to grant extra boons as well as Alacrity. Abrasive Grit is going to make it so whenever you apply barrier to an ally, you're going to remove conditions from them and grant them might. So this further leans into the insane amounts of condition cleanse that Scourge brings. So if you're on a condition heavy fight, just remember, whenever you apply barrier, you are removing conditions. Sand Sage is a very important trait. It's going to make it so you gain concentration, and a big amount at that, whenever you have at least one active shade. So you are always going to want to have at least one shade up at all points. So if you see your Manifest Sandshade off cooldown, it's a good idea to use it, because this is quite a good amount of extra concentration, which is very important for you as the Alacrity healer of the group. Herald of Sorrow is going to make what would normally be your regular Desert Shroud turn into Sandstorm Shroud, which is going to upgrade our Shroud to provide a ton of extra barrier, which is also going to translate into more Alacrity. Blooded Sand is going to reduce all your incoming damage whenever you have a shade active, so again, always have a Sand Shade active. Desert Empowerment is the trait that's actually going to make you be able to apply Alacrity, so whenever you summon a Sand Shade, it's going to apply barrier, and when you apply barrier, you're going to apply Alacrity to your team. So every source of barrier application, you are now going to start providing Alacrity as well. And because you have so many sources of barrier generation, it means that you're effectively going to be capped out on Alacrity really easy. So a key part of playing Heal Scourge is constantly blasting out barrier to upkeep might, to upkeep Alacrity, as well as providing all the other key boons that you want to be providing as a healer. Now generally when it comes to the playstyle of Heal Scourge, the main thing you're going to want to be doing is keeping a Sand Shade up at all time, using your Sand Cascade and Sandstorm Shroud off cooldown to provide barrier and Alacrity. Most of the time you'll be wanting to use Garish Pillar off cooldown for the pulsing healing that it provides, but you can delay it if you know there's going to be a big hit incoming that you're going to have to heal up, or if you expect people to go down, because it will also revive your team. Use Nefarious Favor whenever there's conditions that need to be removed, and you can generally use any of your Life Force generating skills off cooldown. Just remember you have your CC on Torch 5 as well as Warhorn 4, not to mention your Flesh Golem. Garish Pillar also fears enemies as well, so keep that in mind. If you have Desiccate, you're going to want to use that off cooldown for the Might, Life Force and Fury generation, and in general just keep an eye on your allies' health bars. If you see them getting close to going down, just be prepared that you may need to start reviving. But overall, Heal Scourge is a very easy heal build to get up and running with. Unironically, most of the value from the build actually comes from just your Shroud skills, because you get your healing on Shroud 4, you get barrier on Shroud 1, 3 and 5, as well as condition cleanse on Shroud 2, not to mention everything that applies barrier. That's actually where most of the value in this build is. So even if you're kind of just spamming all your Shroud skills off cooldown, you're probably going to be performing quite well as a Heal Scourge, and for most encounters that's going to be sufficient. Same thing with your weapon skills, you can kind of just use everything off cooldown, except your CC, save that for when you need it, and you're going to perform okay. But the more encounter knowledge you have and the more deliberate you are with your skills, the better off you're going to be as a Heal Scourge. So it has a very low barrier of entry, but there's a lot of extra value and skill expression you can get out of the build. Like if you know a big hit is going to be incoming, you can save your barrier for that point to mitigate that hit. If you know people are going to go down, you can tee up your revive skills. If people go down away from the group, you can flick a Signet of Undeath their way to get them up. There's a lot of very skillful things you can do with Heal Scourge to really help carry your team. But if you just want to dive in and start healing, you can get in and start blasting your skills on cooldown while you get a feel for the build, and you're going to be doing okay. So this is a very good heal build for beginners, and you're going to be providing a lot of value to your team, even if you don't really understand that much about how the build works. So there we go. That is everything you need to know about Heal Scourge, one of what I consider to be the top 3 healers in Guild Wars 2, as well as being one of the easiest builds in the game to play overall. It has an incredibly low barrier of entry, and it gives you the option to carry your team through all different kinds of difficult raid encounters. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about Heal Scourge, and if you're in the mood for more Scourge build guides. I've made a great build guide here on the wonderful Condition Damage Scourge, one of my personal favorite DPS builds in the game. But for now, I'll catch you all next time. Cheers.